Women, you deserve to take care of yourself. Training, taking care of you, let's face it, it's not selfish. I know that's what you tell yourself. I know that you make excuses and you say, hey, I don't have the time. The family's relying on me. I've got too many things. But as the old adage goes, you can only fill others' cups if you fill yours first. If you are doing things to invest in yourself, you become a better human. You become a better light for the world, and you're able to help other people. And today's guest is going to teach you how. Welcome to the Evolve Podcast. Evolve your body, evolve your mind, evolve your soul, and evolve your tribe. And now it's time to disrupt. And with that, folks, we want to welcome you to another episode of the Evolve Podcast. Joining me in his bright red t-shirt, telling you to disrupt your life from Oberlin, Ohio, the man, the myth, the legend, the man with the new hip, the bionic man himself, the most interesting man that I know, W. Miles Riley. Welcome, Miles.
That's it. Whatever you do the opposite. You want to shake it up, whatever you do or think the opposite.
Disrupt.
Thanks, Steve.
And somewhere buried in the snow in the mountains of Utah, I am Steve Cutler. Today, folks, we're excited to be joined by somebody that I've always felt like is inspirational in the health and fitness space, lives what she preaches, walks the walk, and talks the talk. Shelly Rudd, welcome to the Evolve Podcast.
Wow, thank you. I don't know if I deserve that introduction.
You definitely do. You certainly are an inspiration. I mean, you have lived a healthy and fit life for such a long time. And one of the things I've always admired about you is that you just really take the time to invest in yourself and push yourself on a regular basis. We had a chance to work together for several years, and as a group fitness instructor, I used to get feedback on you that, people loved your class. They felt this tribal sense of community, this loyalty to you. And they also hated you at the same time because you would make them work harder than what they could. So tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
For starters, I'm a mother of 3 boys and I live in Bluffdale, Utah. And I am a fitness professional, and I guess under that realm, I'm a certified personal trainer, nutritionist. I teach group fitness, and I've been in the fitness industry for over 20 years, and I absolutely love it. I'm very passionate about what I do, and I'm an all or nothing person, which has its pros and cons. But
you're very mellow. You're very calm, aren't you? You walk around in this Zen state all the time, don't you?
It's really weird to be sitting right now. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
I don't sit very much. Yeah. And I'm sure most mothers can definitely relate to that too. You don't sit much as a mom. And with 3 little boys, there's never a dull moment. And today is a snow day. So they're all home right now.
So they might be jumping into the podcast.
That's what's happening. Yes,
that's awesome.
We have numbed them with some entertainment downstairs, so we'll see how long that lasts.
Good.
I have one turning 11 tomorrow, and then my oldest will be 13 in April, and then my youngest is 6.
Oh, so you're thoroughly ensconced in the sweet spot.
Yeah, I actually am in a sweet spot because I'm out of diapers, I'm out of strollers and car seats, which is amazing. Yeah. And they're all pretty, they can brush their own teeth, that kind of stuff, but it's a good spot because my youngest is finally in school all day, which is exciting for me in a sense that with my career and what I want to do with my life and some things I've always wanted to do, I have time to do that now. So I'm excited for that.
Couple of things I want to make sure we set the stage on today. When people see us posting about this episode on social media, you might see Shelly and say, wait a minute, I've seen her before. Even if you don't live in Utah, and that's because you do some fitness modeling. And there's been times where I've been out and about and I look over and I say, oh, there's Shelly. So some of our listeners might see this and say, oh, I've seen Shelly before. I know who she is. The other thing is that as a mom of three, and you have a husband who's a busy lawyer and travels and does all of these things, there's every excuse in the world to not live a healthy and fit life. And so I want to make sure that we lay that foundation so that as our listeners listen to this, they don't just say, well, it's easy for her. Because as a mom of three who's got a busy husband and has a career herself, living a healthy, fit life isn't easy. It takes the same amount of work, the same amount of effort for you as it does everyone else. But I want to kick it back and talk about before you got into health and fitness. I know you've got a really fascinating story that led you into health and fitness. Can you walk our listeners through your journey to getting to the health and fitness space?
Absolutely. Yeah, just like you said, we all have 24 hours in a day, and I still have to make it a priority for me to do that. So, but I think a lot of people ask me, what motivates you? And quite honestly, it's started at a young age. I started Healthy Habits, which is what I'm trying to do with my kids, but I was a dancer, and I danced since the age of 3. And I got really competitive into it by the time I was in middle school. And then as a sophomore in high school, there was this competition that I felt a lot of pressure to win because I had a dance teammate and my sister and her sister who had won this Miss Drill Team Utah title, basically. And I had all this pressure to win it, but I felt, and in the dance world, which is something that is still very prevalent, is there's a lot of eating disorders involved because as a dancer, you're always compared to someone, and comparison is the thief of joy. It really is. And as a dancer, that was like my life. And I was so dead set on looking a certain way. And I thought if I didn't look that way, I wouldn't earn this title. That I felt this pressure. And my parents didn't put the pressure on me. I think I put it more on myself because it was just kind of like the next step and I was expected to do it.
Yeah.
So I started, I got my competition solo going, and I just got down into this really deep hole of self-determination. I would go get the keys to my local church, and I'd go practice in the gym there, my solo over and over and over again. I'd get up early before school. I would go running, but then it got to the extreme point where I was living on 500 calories a day, which isn't an extreme anorexic situation, but with the amount of activity I was doing, it was insane. Running 4 to 5 miles in the mornings. And then I literally would dance. I'd get out of school early to go to ballet for 3 hours. And then I would just practice my solo. So it was constant energy. And I don't even know how I did it. I think I was living off adrenaline or something. So it got to a really unhealthy point. I won the title. I went on to win the US and the international title as a sophomore, which was awesome. But then it was kind of like, was I really happy? Not really.
Yeah.
What I didn't really have that true happiness, and all I cared about was dance. I mean, my social life was unheard of. I'd leave it. Everyone knew at 10 o'clock, Shelly would leave the party, and I'd be like, okay, I'm going to bed so I can get up to go run, Wow. So I started at a young age, and then I decided I wanted to run a marathon because I'd won these solo competitions. So it was like, what's next? So I trained for a marathon my junior year in high school. And on one of my training runs, I hit a wall. And if anyone's familiar with endurance training, you know what I'm talking about. I had to have my mom come pick me up, and it was so interesting. I mean, my body, it wouldn't move. It was so odd to me. And my mom finally put her foot down. She says, you know what? I'm done with you not feeding yourself properly. I'm taking you to a nutritionist. So she took me to a nutritionist, and he had me write down on a piece of paper everything I had eaten that day. And it was about, 400 calories. And it was like 5 o'clock at night.
Wow.
So it was a big hit on the head. And he said to me, okay, do you want to run 26 miles or not? I said, well, yeah. And he goes, well, you're not going to get across the finish line with this many calories in your body. Like, it's not even physically possible. So you've got to make a decision now what you're going to do. You've got to fuel your body. So that gave me almost more permission, I guess, to eat. And so running that marathon got me out of that eating disorder. It sounds a little backwards, but it did. And then I learned to develop a healthier relationship with food. But then as dance progressed, I graduated early out of high school and danced professionally for a company here in Utah. And I put on the freshman 15 that a lot of people do. And I was not getting put in these dances that I knew I should be. And I knew I was a talented dancer and I should be. And I was like, okay, I've got to lose weight. So I went back on this crazy train again, where I lost 15 pounds really quick. And then all of a sudden I was front and center in these dances. So it just kind of feeds this unhealthy behavior. Yeah. I ended up only dancing for a few years in the company. And I as I was dancing in there, I started certifying for different things to teach in the gym. And I got into being a personal trainer on Pilates reformers and Pilates equipment. And I realized that is the space I wanted to be in, because I felt better. And I wasn't comparing myself all day in this mirror all the time, looking in the mirror, comparing my body to the girl next to me, where even though I looked good, it still wasn't good enough. Right.
Yeah.
So getting into that space. And then I went to college and went into human development and nutrition. I got a bachelor's in that. And I just started to develop this healthier relationship with food and with fitness. And even there, you can take it too far. I think there's a fine line with anything. It's really hard to find balance in anything. But, as a mother and as it's gone on, I found that if I don't do that for myself, I am not the mother that these children deserve. I know I can't even think straight if I don't get my workout in. Even my husband early on in our marriage one day said, you look so good, honey, just take a day off. It'll be fine. I mean, by 7 o'clock at night, I was ready to rip his head off. He's like, I'm never doing that again. Go running, please. Go for a run.
Yeah.
And he just knows that's just what makes me tick,
It's part of how you live your life now.
I find it fascinating when you were talking about the girls with eating disorders, that it's almost as if you had these two things that were fused together. You had the young girl's brain, but a warrior mentality.
Yes.
Yeah. And they were fused together.
Yeah.
Which I find fascinating.
It's a pretty common thing back, when for young girls in particular, this they call it the female athlete triad, and that's really the three main things that happen to young girls when they start to get into disordered eating or they develop an eating disorder. It's a very difficult thing to get away from, but common to that is this competitive spirit you want to achieve. You're also hyper aware of society and comparison. And you want to perform in your sport, but you also want to look a certain way. And that's so common for young girls. Let's kick back to that time in life. I know that one of the things that you're passionate about, Shelly, is that you want to help give a positive message to young girls, and you want to help young girls to develop a positive relationship with their bodies, with nutrition. So let's talk to that high school dancer. Let's talk to that high school softball player, that high school volleyball player, that high school basketball player. What would you tell them? What did you learn from your experience that you'd like to pass some wisdom on to?
Number one, I think your freedom begins the day you realize nobody is thinking about you.
Great point.
I think I even remember even in middle school, it was one of the most self-conscious times in my life, and that just fed into it. I was so worried about every little thing, and no one cares. No one cares. And when people want to come to my class at the gym, oh, but I'm just not that fit, I'm going to look so stupid. I go, guess what? No one cares. The gym is that one time where you're going to be selfish. And that's okay. And that's when most people are selfish, that 1 hour when they come to my class or whatever. They don't really care about anyone else. And that's okay. But for the most part, nobody cares and are thinking about you as much as they think they are. So that's number one, because I always felt like I wasn't enough, right? I was always comparing myself to the head cheerleader. And I was comparing myself to these other girls dating these cute boys, even though dating for me was on the back burner. That was not my top priority. My top priority was being the best dancer and the skinniest person. Like That was all that consumed me. So if I could go back, I would say, okay, no one really cares. Number one, like it's really great if you can achieve that. But number two, I was diagnosed with osteoporosis when I was 16 because I was eating such a low calorie diet. I wasn't menstruating. I never had a period. And so my spine was equivalent to an 80-year-old woman's.
Oh my gosh.
And what am I going to have if I don't have my health, right? Thank goodness you can still build on your bone density until you're like, low 20s, mid 20s. So I was able to get the strength back, but in my spine, but I was weak and it consumed me. I was never happy, the other thing I would tell myself is, what really is happiness? Yeah, you can win the competition, but is that going to matter in 5 years? Maybe, depending on where you want to go with dance, but in 10 years, no,
Right.
But what if you could say, I tried my hardest and I became a better person and dancer because of it? There's so many good positive things that came from dance, but a lot of the negatives, I just wish I could go back to myself and say, guess what? Guys don't actually like the really skinny girls. Like, guys don't even like that anyways. What I thought was an ideal body was not ideal, probably in a man's eyes. And so in high school, you're just so clouded with that. And you think you know everything and you think high school is your life when it's not. There's so much beyond high school. And if you can develop the healthy behaviors now, guess what? You're going to feel good and you're going to be happy and you can accomplish even more after high school. And so I really wish those are some things that I knew and I could, and I even want to just tell my teenage son right now too, like, I can just tell that he's a boy, but he's going through it. There's so much competition through football and everything.
Yeah, right.
And it's okay if you're not the best. You don't have to be the best, but feel like you're accomplishing something. That's what really matters. And then no one really cares and it doesn't really matter as long as you're becoming a better person and you're learning how to work hard and developing these important habits that are going to get you through this world, that self-motivation and self-determination. I had that, but I didn't know how to balance it, So
and create a different perspective. I think that's one of the biggest things you talked about is how do you step back and have a different perspective on life and take a more holistic view. And sometimes that takes throwing yourself into other experiences, right? Seeing things from a different perspective or getting wisdom from other people. I love how you use the quote, comparison is a thief of joy. I agree with that 100%. I think back to when I was a kid, growing up. I mean, we had movies, we had magazines, we had television, and that was about it. So I would look at guys like Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone on the Rocky movies and think, oh yeah, that's what I want to look like. Well, nowadays you can pick up your phone, your, whatever. Social media has so many people out there that you can look at. You can see 100 different fit, perfect, beautiful bodies in 30 seconds or less. And guys, girls, like you're just inundated with that. And I think that's really hard because it sets an expectation that that's what we should be right now. In fact, I was having a conversation with a kid yesterday. Gone to a workout with a friend, and this kid was there. He was 24 years old. Looked great, fit kid, and was just getting into the fitness industry. And he's like, I want to grow muscle faster. I want to grow muscle faster. And so my friend pulls me over and says, Steve, you've been doing this a long time. How long would it take? He's 24 years old. I said, well, probably when you're about 29 or 30, you can start to put on more muscle, but just stay with it right now. And my friend just drops to the floor laughing. He says, that's exactly what I told him. And I said, look, I'm going to be honest with you. When I was 24, I didn't want to hear that, but I am grateful that people told me that, and I'm grateful that I stuck with it. So I think that comparison piece is an extremely important aspect of it. Don't just look out and compare yourself to everybody else that's around there because you don't know what else is going on. A couple of other things I want to make sure that we point out here. You brought up amenorrhea, the fact that you had lost your menstrual cycle. It's a very common thing when young girls get in this disordered eating or eating disorder situation. That's not a good thing for girls that might be listening to this. That is a sign that there are several problems happening inside of your body. Bone density loss is just one of them, but it can lead to so many other things: organ failure, organ shutdown. I mean, you could end up in the hospital and you could die from this. And so understanding what some of those signs and symptoms are is just is a critical thing. If there are moms or dads that are hearing this and they are looking at their daughters or maybe even their sons that might have that obsessive workout or obsession about food, these are some things that you've got to understand are red flags and put it up. Go have that conversation with your son or your daughter. You mentioned the comparison piece. Comparison is the thief of joy. What have you learned over the years to keep you away from comparison?
I think, as humans, we're going to compare. It's only a natural thing. But when bringing it back to the social media, it's really hard not to compare when you're on social media.
Right.
And I don't care who you are, you're going to feel the negative effects of it if you're not careful.
Sure.
For me, the people I follow and what I look at on social media is all inspiration to me. I follow so many fitness people. My husband isn't even on Instagram, but he'll log in as me and go in. He's like, gosh, all these fitness people, you have so many fitness people. I'm like, because they inspire me. Look what they're doing. I'm getting so many new ideas and this is so great. But then if I find myself on there too much, it does that exact thing to me. And you feel like, well, why aren't I doing this? Maybe I should, as a creator on there, I'm going, oh, well, maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe I should do it like that or whatever. I don't have a ton of followers, right? I'm not a huge Instagram person, but what I do have is some local people, and they're people that I personally know, which is really fun for me, and people that can ask me questions. They're people that I might see, on a day-to-day basis. And so that's really fun to me. And they feel comfortable asking me questions. I don't want to be that person that puts stuff out on social media that makes people feel worse about themselves, but then again, whether you think you are or not, you're never going to do it perfectly. Right. So that's just part of being and putting yourself out there on social media. It does take a lot of guts sometimes, but again, I have to remind myself, no one really cares. If they care, they're just going to swipe or unfollow me, and who cares? So I think the comparison thing, you just kind of have to reel it back in and be like, okay, really, everyone's just trying to make it in this world. We live in a tricky world, and if I can create more joy by helping people and motivating people to move their bodies and feed your bodies in a healthy way, then great, then mission accomplished. That's what I want to do. And the whole realm of it all.
It's like reframing the narrative. I like that. Stop comparing, be inspired by, but also be inspired by someone else's process.
Yeah. And I get so much inspiration. And if there's someone who I feel like I'm doing that inside my head, I'll mute them or something, so I don't see it. Yeah. Or if there's a negative energy there with something, or if someone messages me something rude, I'll just mute them, because you kind of have to create those boundaries, I think, with social media now. If I had social media in high school, I have no idea. I can't imagine. I just can't imagine being a teenager right now. They have so much pressure against them with social media and then everything else I was going through too. I mean, the dance world especially is insane. I know the sport world is too, because that's where my boys are. But I was so scared to have a daughter because of all of it. I have 3 boys, but it is a really tricky space to be in. I just think you just have to watch. But if I had a daughter, I don't know what I would do. I mean, if she would want to dance, I would say great, but I would be really going in there with caution, because it is a scary place to be in. But there's so many positive things too, right?
Sure.
So it's hard.
But I think you bring up a couple of pretty powerful points. It's about curating what your intake is, but also being conscious and intentional about what your output is. If your intake is not inspiring you, then mute it for a while. It's just like if you have bad, toxic, whatever people in your personal life, you would not hang around them, right? You probably wouldn't go to the parties with them, or you wouldn't go out to dinner with them, or whatever it was. You would curate your life and edit appropriately. And I think we need to do that with social media, and we need to teach our kids how to do that too. You bring up dance, and you bring up what it's like to have young girls. I was in that boat, about, I don't know, 7 years ago, as my daughter got more into the competitive side of dance. I was really worried about it because it's not a healthy environment. And so I made a conscious decision to have little, we call them coffee dates, where maybe we're just going out and getting a treat. Maybe we're going to the coffee shop and she's getting her favorite little chai latte, and we sit down and I just say, "So how's life? What's going on?" And let her talk. And then sometimes she would ask me questions, and sometimes I would point things out and say, "Hey, I just noticed this about whatever." And sometimes it had to do with dance, or sometimes it had to do with something else that I'm hearing coming out of her mouth. I said, "I just want to give you some perspective on that." And we have these conversations about a broader perspective on life. And I think, fortunately, she navigated that space pretty well, became the captain of her drill team, and really focused more on being a leader, which was a service-minded focus. And I think that the conversations and just opening up, and I would tell her, I say, "Look, this world that you're in, it's a weird world. It's not normal. You will never experience a dance world outside of dance. You will never experience this hyper competitive focus on yourself, drama, crazy stuff. So navigate it as best you can right now, and understand when you get out of this particular situation, then life is going to change completely. So it's a matter of how do you navigate it, but also how do you learn principles from it." So I think that's a key. Shelly, I want to jump back to when you talked about you shifted from dance into, you wanted to run a marathon, you hit a wall, you bonked, as they say, ran out of energy. What was it about that point that sparked the change for you?
Well, that you just can't do what you want to do if you're not fueling your body and looking beyond the outside appearance, right?
Yeah.
I think strength comes from the inside out. And that's kind of how that's how Pilates is too, which I love, because you're working from your core and it's from the inside out. And I just didn't understand that, because I was looking at it all the wrong way, from the outside in. And if you're not looking from the inside out, but really beyond the food and all that, I think I wasn't happy. And I said this before, I just wasn't. When you're so self-absorbed, I think eating disorders are one of the most selfish diseases you can ever have.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's almost like a drug addiction.
Worse,
for many
it's
an
people,
addiction. Yeah,
frankly.
It is worse for many people.
It's harder to overcome. Psychologists that I've talked to say that it is harder to overcome than most drug addictions, including meth.
Yeah, I believe it, and I have some personal experience with people with drug addiction in my life that have been really close to me. So I do understand that, and I think maybe that's a reason I could relate with them a little bit. But it's one of those things that I just had to say, okay, that's not what's important. Because I even remember there was a day where I was scared to eat a banana. Wow. A banana. Because I thought that banana would make me fat. And I remember thinking to myself, I would rather die than be fat and eat that banana. That's what went through my head. That's how messed up you are mentally. So when I'm running and I hit a wall and I realize, okay, this isn't going to work. It was a big crossroad for me, because I had to decide, you can die and be skinny and think that looks good. Even though I had friends telling me, okay, your hip bones are poking out. I can see all your ribs or whatever. But that almost fed it a little bit. That almost fueled it, because it was like, oh, what I'm doing is working. So it's really hard to know what to say to people. That's the other tricky part.
Yep.
And it is so tricky. But I just knew, okay, if I feel good when I run and I feel good when I move my body, and if I can't, I'm so sorry. If I can't do that, then I don't know what I'm going to, I'm not going to be able to do anything in my life. Right.
Yeah.
But I did know that was one thing that made me happy. And when I ate, I felt better. And I wasn't like ripping off my brother's head, when he would ask me a question or something,
Which I'm
I
sure
wasn't
he
this
was
like
happy
moody.
about.
Yeah. And you'd think I
Yeah.
was a moody teenager, but I didn't even have hormones running through my body because I didn't even have a menstrual cycle. It was
Yeah.
because I was malnourished, and that's what it was. So I think, and like you said with your daughter, how she was a leader and it was almost a service opportunity.
Yeah.
When you find that you can fuel yourself, you can actually think beyond yourself. And that's where happiness comes from, is when you can actually help people.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I love about fitness. I love it when people say, okay, that was such a fun, hard workout. Thank you. I love this, or whatever. Or thank you for this tip because this has helped me get off. This has helped me get off soda, or this has helped me get off. I don't know how to turn off my notifications. I'm really sorry.
Oh, it's
Can
okay.
you hear all those coming through?
No. You're good.
Oh, you can't.
No.
Okay.
No.
I'm like declining all these calls. So anyways, I lost my train of thought, but
you were talking about how people come to you and they talk. Yeah. Your service saying they come to you and tell you what a great workout.
Unless you have a purpose and what you're doing is not helping other people, you're never going to get true fulfillment out of it. And that is where a lot of happiness comes, right? Is that fulfillment, that purpose, and serving other people. And that's so cool. Your daughter got to find that in drill team.
Yeah.
I was a drill mistress. I choreographed stuff, but I didn't really ever find that service part until I started teaching dance. And teaching dance actually paid me really good money when I was really poor and going through college. It was awesome. And I loved teaching these girls and being an example to them. And I could, see the change and see them improve. That is so fulfilling. I don't know that there's anything better than that. So I love that about what I do now. And I want to, as I move forward with things I want to do, it's hopefully to help people, change their life, change their daily habits and how they can feel better. You don't need to starve yourself. You don't need to work out for 6 hours a day. Let's find a good, healthy balance and be the happy moms and wives and neighbors and friends that we can be, and be a positive influence on people around us rather than that negative one that's always comparing, someone that can uplift someone else.
Talk a little bit more about your path to happiness. When you recognized that you weren't happy and you said, okay, I've got to make a decision. I've got to make a decision that I have to take care of myself. I got to do better. I'm not happy. I've got to go forward. What did it take to get to where you were to where you are right now? Because I've always perceived you as a happy person. I think you bring a light when you come into a room, and you're inspirational. And even when you're yelling at people, and you're intense when you teach, and you're kind of intimidating, if I'm being honest, when you're yelling and screaming up there with this barbell that you're curling. But you have this light about you where you genuinely seem happy. And so what did that path look like? After you made the decision, what were some of the steps that you started to take to move you towards happiness?
Doing something hard, accomplishing something hard.
Okay.
I think if we can do hard things, I think it gives us confidence. And that marathon, it took me 5 years to run another one. It was so dang hard.
Wow.
So doing something hard and going outside of my comfort zone, that was number one. And then when I find that maybe I inspired other people, helping them do the same thing.
Yeah.
And then 3, just finding exercise is my natural drug of choice, truly is. I love how I feel when I do it. I mean, I would be the first to say I'm addicted to exercise, but I've had to find a healthy balance with that, with being a mom and with everything that I'm doing in my life. But I know that's something I have to do. And if I do that, I'm a happy person that day.
Mm-hmm.
As long as my husband always tells everyone she's got to get all of her sleep, she's got to eat, and she's got to get her workout in. Otherwise, don't talk to her. And it's so true. And
that's great.
You kind of find these habits and what works good. And I find and I know I've tried the things where I've worked with a coach and trained for a figure competition. I've done all those things, and those things I've done it for a learning experience. But I also found that those extremes take me to a place that I shouldn't go to because of my history and where I've been. I know I can't intermittent fast. I just can't. I'm not capable of doing that. So I feel like finding what works for me and finding that balance and just kind of watching myself. Okay, I'm not going to go to that extreme because I'm finding myself, I'm ornery, I'm not my happy person. What's wrong here? And then I kind of have to reel it back in. So I think it's always doing that check-in with yourself. You know, what am I doing? Why am I not happy today? What is it? So
I love that.
And it's doesn't always come down to workouts, you know, too.
Right.
There's a lot of other things that go into it, but
you've kind of created your happy list, right? You know what your happy list is. Mo Gadot wrote a book called Solve for Happy, which if any of our listeners have not read it, I highly recommend it. It's one of the best books I've read in the last probably year and a half. And one of the things that he recommends in there is to just make your happy list. What is it? What are the things that make you happy in life? What do you enjoy? Accomplishing something difficult for you. You said inspiring other people, exercising. Those are the things that make you happy. I'm sure there's more on the happy list, but those are the things that if you do those consistently, what was that? There was a TV show or movie where somebody's like, oh my gosh, it's like, you're like a gremlin. You have all these rules. You can't eat after this time and you have to go to bed on time. Right. But we should all be like gremlins, where we have to hit those certain things, because when we do that, then we just create this habit of happiness over time. And those things I think are really important. Another thing I want to unpack just a little bit, Shelly, is you talked about that you tried certain things and then you realized, okay, that's not my thing. Two really critical points there. One, people should get out and try a lot. Try going for runs, try a marathon or even a 5 or a 10K, try doing a bodybuilding, try to go learn how to surf, try to learn how to longboard, whatever it is, right? Try different things all the time, because I think that's how you find what it is that you enjoy later on in life.
Right.
But the second thing I want to unpack is you said, I can't do those things because that leans too much into my personality where I would take it to an extreme. That wisdom is powerful. It's not about how do I learn how to exercise the right way with the right sets and the right reps that is most important. It's learn your body, learn yourself, learn your psyche, learn your emotional bandwidth, learn where your triggers are, right? And then work within those. If people could do that, they would be much healthier. How have you gone through life with experiencing these different things and trying different things and figured out where your boundaries are?
Well, first off, when I try something, I want to finish it, because if I say I'm going to do something, I'm that person that wants to do it. But, and I feel like there's a learning experience in everything, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Part of training for a show for me was I actually trained and did a fitness photo shoot instead of an actual show, because the bikini thing isn't really my thing. So doing that, I wanted to learn the sport of it. Basically, it gave me a lot more respect for people who do it.
Yeah.
And it's not such a vain thing like I think it looks like, because I think that right there is much harder than running a marathon.
Yeah,
hey,
for sure.
I'm on here. It's just a minute. Yeah, you can go. You have to go out there now. Sorry.
It's okay.
So basically, they weren't supposed to be here today. I'm so sorry.
We're all parents here, so we get it.
Yes. Right. Okay.
It humanizes you. Now,
yes.
Now we see the mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know, they're so funny. So basically, I just think by doing that, I learned a lot of things. I did it, but then I'm like, okay, I'm back in this really weird space. And this is taking me back to how I was in high school. I remember being like this, because then I was on a meal plan and I had to move to macro counting, and the macro counting really stressed me out. Like
gotcha.
I remember going to Disneyland with my kids and I was like, I can't eat that. I'd have to log that in my food. Oh my gosh, I can't eat that. What am I going to do? And then I had this fear of, you see some bodybuilders, they'll train and then they kind of blow up because they don't reverse diet correctly. Yep. So I had to get out of, I reverse diet very carefully, but then I was like, I can't macro count. I can't do any of this. I've got to find, I'm more of like that intuitive eating person, because otherwise, if I think about it too much, because I get that question a lot, do you count your macros? No way. Because for me, it's maybe good for a couple days, but for me, it's not going to be ideal.
Yeah.
because that's just how I'm wired. Right. But for some people, that's great. I'm not saying that's for everybody.
And everybody's different, right? Yeah. So like you,
yes.
I've got a really extreme, like if I go into something, I want to go all in because I want to like immerse myself in it and see if that works for me.
Right.
And so when I did bodybuilding, it's been probably 20 years ago, I wanted to do a bodybuilding competition. And I thought, well, I'm not a very big guy, and I'm not going to take drugs. So I'm going to do a natural competition. So I did. And I finished it up, and I love the process because I love training. I love training hard. I love the aesthetic part of it. As an artist, I love the whole idea of now you're sculpting something, in a different way than I was before, or I do with my painting or whatever. So there were several things about that I absolutely loved. But then when I got out of that, I was kind of lost for several years of, well, what do I do now for my food? Do I always have to track? Do I kind of track? What does that look like?
Right.
And I went through
because you're so used to being regimented.
Yeah. And I can be regimented. Like there's no problem there. But it messed my mind up later on because it was, all right, I don't have that goal. I just want to be healthy, fit, and live a good life. So I got away from tracking for a while. I got lost. I gained 20, 30 pounds. I didn't feel good. And eventually I said, well, but what is it that works? So the tracking actually works really well for me. And it works well because I know how to eat for my body and how my brain functions the best. And so I track, and I track on a regular basis, but I don't track to the point where it stresses me out if I don't hit certain things. If I'm low one day, okay, whatever. If I'm high another day, all right, that's fine too, because I know that there's some variability in there. So my shift in perspective with age and wisdom, I think, allows me to do what I want to do so that I can be optimal. And I adjust. And then there's times where maybe on a weekend or maybe we're on a trip, I don't track anything just because I don't want to. So I think it's important for our listeners to understand that there is no right or wrong way. Keto isn't
100%.
the way. Intermittent fasting isn't the way. High carb isn't the way. Macros aren't the way. There's so many different ways for this to work. And you have to take the psychology, you have to take your emotional impact into it, and you have to take into it, how your body functions, what works best for you. So I absolutely love how you talked about that. A lot of this is an inside out process, as you mentioned before. You got into teaching Pilates partially because it was inside out. You started to do some of the mental and emotional work. That's the inside out work. Talk about your progression as you started to find the things that made you happy, and you started to put these boundaries and barriers on yourself to say, okay, I'm not going to go this extreme. I'm not going to go that direction. Walk us from Pilates to where you're at now. What did that path look like for you?
So basically, you're asking, the inside out process.
Yeah. So you really got deep and said, okay, I'm going to work on this from inside out. I worked on my emotions. I started to eat my food properly. And then I got into Pilates because now I'm working from the inside out. How are you applying that approach as you've gone through your journey to where you're at right now?
I think it's never a perfect path because it was still like this for me, for a while. And I think I took the approach of, I got into a situation where I was dating a guy who was bipolar, and he was manic depressive. And I felt like I had to be the person to serve him and to really help him. So for me, it gave me a lot of purpose, and it almost took me, again, it was that extreme. I took myself a little too far with it, where I'm like, okay, he can't survive without me, right? He needs me. And it turned into this hard thing because I ended up marrying him, and he got into hardcore drugs. And it was 3.5 years of this up and down cycle of me trying to serve him. But then I felt trapped inside, like I couldn't be myself, because then he would judge me and call me, say that I have an addiction or whatever with my exercise or something. So he limited me and said, you can only work out an hour a day. Wow. If you think I can't do this. So that was really hard for me. And I remember I would turn to food for my emotions because I couldn't let it out. Right. So he went to these outpatient programs and he would go away for a month and couldn't contact me. And it was like I was this caged bird, and I'd come out and I would just go crazy. I remember running, and then I would finally get clarity because I could go for a run and go work out and do what made me feel good. And then I could start to eat normal. And I finally found that I'm like, okay, I think I'm helping him, but I'm not. Like, his problem, like, I can't fix his problem. If he can't fix it himself, then, you know, I can only encourage him. I can only do this so long.
Yeah.
So after 3.5 years of that, I divorced him. And I think I grew probably maturity wise 10 years in those 3 years, because I learned so much about myself in that it just reconfirmed everything I needed as a person. You know, like, if someone's not going to accept me for me and what I need as a person to function, like, that's not okay. And you can't just completely give yourself to someone and change your life like that and like forget yourself, you know? And it's like, oh, but you're being selfish. Oh, like, it's your spouse. You need to do that. And you can only do it for so long. And so when I was able to get rid of that toxicity in my life, it was just this other, like, I was back up to where I was like, okay, this is where I feel good. I'm happy. And I was able to shed like all this emotional weight that I had. And I was able to do those things that I knew made me happy, which was came back to that girl running a marathon in high school. You know, this is what makes me feel good. This is what makes me tick. And I can be that happy person that most people know me as, right? And I'm not crying inside and putting on a fake. I remember having to go to the gym and teach a class, and I had to live this double life and pretend like I was happy. And it was so difficult, you know,
tears at your soul.
And yeah, it does. And I just said, I can't, you know what? As long as I knew I give it my all, I knew that I could walk away and feel good about things. So I did. And now what's interesting is I can count on my 5 people on my hand since then that were going through the exact same situation, and they were able to come talk to me, and because they thought they were trapped and stuck too. Yeah. And I was able to help those people. And that right there was so much more service than I could have given to my spouse, who was stuck in his own addiction and had to work on himself. Right. And so that also prepared me and made me grow as a person to meet and marry my husband now, who is like, you know, the man of my dreams. And I'm so blessed to have him in my life.
Guy. Yeah, great guy.
And he understands me, like, he supports me, and he knows, like, that's my thing. If we're on vacation and I want to leave for a couple hours, he's like, great, go do it. That's your thing. You know, he never holds it against me. He knows it's what makes me happy. And you've got to surround yourself with those people. And like you said, like, those toxic people, you got to leave. You become the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with most. And I think about that a lot because I spend time with people trail running, you know, which is something that is so therapeutic for me. I spend time with people at the gym, but there's some people where you're like, okay, I can't have you in my life. And you kind of have to make those boundaries, you know? So that was kind of a lot of information, but it's never like this clear path. It's just been this big learning process for me. And I'm so grateful for everything I went through, because I know it made me who I am today. And then I can still grow as a person there and focus on, you know, helping other people and having that purpose and finding those healthy things. And I can relate with people, right? Yeah. It's hard to talk to a teenage girl going through an eating disorder if you haven't been through it yourself.
Totally.
But if I can say, I get it, I've been there. Like, I know what's going through your head right now, you know? And I think that's huge when it comes to helping other people, is that relatability.
Yeah, there's a wisdom, there's an empathy that comes with having to deal with those difficult challenges that, as you said, you grow 10 years in those 3, because when you're pushing up against all that difficulty, when you're having to have those difficult times, you really go deeper and you figure out, where is the core of me? Because the stuff that I'm dealing with, that's not me. That's just the stuff I'm dealing with. And if I'm having to show up in a duplicitous way when I go teach a class, obviously I know that's not me. So who is me? And I think that forcing of yourself to go deeper when you're dealing with that difficulty is so powerful. And it just creates this bandwidth of emotion and this empathy and this wisdom that you can then share with other people, which is a big part of what you do today. Shelly, you've really kind of taken an interesting take on fitness in the last few years, because you love to travel too. Talk a little bit about the transition to what's the name? The Instagram name is Shelly Rudd Travel Fit. Is that right?
Yeah.
So why travel?
So I've always had this bug inside of me that wants to see the world. And I, like, even this morning, I love my treadmill because I have an iFit enabled treadmill where I can run. Like this morning I ran in Costa Rica and it was amazing. I love seeing different places. And that's one thing that led me to really like iFit. So I'm also an iFit trainer. If you have an iFit enabled machine, you can find my workouts on there.
Oh, very cool.
And my dream was to become one of those trainers. I just did studio stuff, but it was to be one of those trainers that they would fly you somewhere and get to do the workouts there. And I never got that opportunity because they basically stopped filming. They still do some, they've stopped filming all of their in-studio stuff.
Okay. So we just got to find somebody else that's doing it, or you got to create your own. So we can get you out there.
That's what I'm doing. So I'm like, okay, I want to create my own.
Yeah.
So I, backing up to 2020, I changed my name it was actually 2019. I changed my Instagram name from Shelly Rudd to Shelly Rudd Travel Fix. I'm like, okay, I want to be the girl that hotels call. I can be that personal trainer that flies in and they put me up in their hotel and I'll teach their classes. I'll take people on like trail runs, whatever, because that was a thing, trainers did that. And then COVID happened. So I was like, well, crap, this isn't going to work. So I started doing, like, I just have I think I have like 3 or 4 workouts is all on my YouTube channel. And then that's how iFit found me. And then I became an iFit trainer. So I did that. And now it's back to where we can travel again. And every time we travel, my favorite thing to do is explore. My husband's thing is golf. So he'll go golf and I'll go explore. And sometimes I have to take him with me so I feel more safe. And he doesn't always love that, but he'll do what he can. So now I want to be, my dream is just to host fitness retreats. And I love the idea of doing retreats for younger teenage dancers or girls going through similar things that I went through, helping them with body image, finding healthy nutrition, because I can relate with them. But then also with people in our community and making that connection, because having connection with your fitness world makes a huge difference and holds you accountable. And it gives you more motivation. You can talk to people. And that's something that I love too, but doing it in a beautiful place too. And to be able to teach people, I think people are just so hard, or the biggest thing they struggle with is getting started. I think getting started is always the hardest thing. And sometimes you just have to remove yourself from your everyday environment, go somewhere and move your body and realize, oh, this isn't as bad as I thought. Like, this actually feels good. Oh, I feel happy right now. Oh, and we're eating this good food and look how good I feel. My dream is to bring that to people and bring people together. So I want to create
travel brings that different perspective, but what a really unique idea to say, hey, we're going to go travel. And then that's how you're going to start your fitness journey. Because most people go travel, they sit on a beach, they get fat, they drink way too much, come home with a sunburn and a hangover.
That's not my kind of vacation at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I like to lay there after I've gotten a really good workout in, or after I've explored my environment, and again, it makes your vacation even better. You sleep good, right? You don't feel gross.
It's so much better. So much better. I remember one of the first trips that my wife and I took to Mexico, and we hiked in and found these cenotes, and then, you're diving down in these pools inside caves, right?
Yes.
What a cool experience. Way better than just sitting around or sitting in a car and going and touring places. I mean, if you can get out, hike, run, go work out, explore places, you're going to just love yourself and life so much better. So what a really cool idea to start your fitness journey while you're traveling. Shelly, a couple of questions as we're coming up to our time here. What's the thing right now that you are most proud of?
Oh, I would say if you ask my teenage self, it would be winning dance competitions.
Okay.
But now it's I think my most proud of, I think the number one thing that makes me happy above fitness is love. And it's the love I have for my husband and my children. And the fact that I am a mother, because even back when I was 16, all I ever wanted to be was be a mom and have a family, right? Because it gives you so much more fulfillment in life. And it is so dang hard. It's so hard.
Yeah.
I lose my cool a lot and it's hard. So, but wow, it is the one thing I'm the most proud of is that. And the person I'm married to, because he makes me who I am and supports me and I support him. And it's a great thing. And if people are anyone out there that's stuck in a relationship where you think there's no way out, there is a way out. Yeah. And the grass is greener on the other side. There's a way out. It's just taking the steps to get there, which is hard and always takes longer than you think it will. But you can be truly happy from the inside out if you don't lie to yourself anymore. Don't live that double life anymore.
Yeah.
I
think doing the work, right? I mean, it takes your path was a lot of hard inner work. And I think doing the work is one of the most valuable things. When you say that you're most proud of your relationships and the love that you have, that doesn't just come easily, right? Those things happen because you do the work. And far too often I hear people who complain about the situation that they're in, whether it's a relationship thing or a body or money or whatever. There are certain things that we can't control in life, but you can control is what you focus on and you show up every day. You do the work that it takes. You want a better relationship, spend time communicating consistently. One of the things we dropped an episode a little while back where my wife came on and we talked about the practice that we do every day, where we use Marshall Rosenberg's concept of nonviolent communication. And we spend 5 to 10 minutes every single day just practicing that because we want to be really good at it because, we have great times together. And then when conflict would come up, we would just reach an impasse. And so we said, well, we got to fix that. So we want more happiness. So how do we do that? Well, let's practice it just like we do everything else.
Oh,
so
I love that.
I think just showing up. If you're overweight, show up, go for a walk. If you want to learn how to eat better, then start tracking things and see what works for your body and what doesn't. Go get a nutrition coach, get educated, show up and just start doing the work. Shelly, when you get stuck, what is something that you do to disrupt your life to create further evolution?
When I get stuck, I come back to, I think I have to take a deep breath. Number one, I have to breathe because I'm a go person and it's really hard for me to just stop and slow down. So I had to do that this morning because my kids are having to do distant learning because it's a snow day.
Yeah.
And they're all at me at the same time. We're trying to, and my husband's out of town. I'm just going, oh my goodness. And I just had to stop and breathe, kind of remove myself from the situation. So that's one thing when I'm in the moment. Number two is my spirituality is a big part. I mean, my workout is a no question thing. That's easy for me because it's something I've just always done.
Yeah.
So, but really taking time to actually sit down and refocus on, my spirituality. And like the other night, I really wanted to get my mind right for talking to you, and just putting pen to paper was really powerful for me. I'm really good at if there's something on my mind, I'll put it in my notes in my phone. But I know you hear the old fashioned thing all the time, just putting the pen to the paper, and it just really lays everything out more clear for me. And I feel like, okay, I can reset and I can redo this and start over tomorrow. And that's okay, because not every day is perfect. That's for sure.
Yeah. I love how you talk about just tapping into that spiritual side on a consistent basis. I think that, our relationship with the deepest part of ourself, that ethereal part, that part that never really changes. I was reading a book this morning that talked about any parent that has kids knows that when they come out of the womb, they're not tabula rasa. They're not a blank slate, right?
No.
They got personality. I mean, my oldest, when she came out, she didn't cry, scream. She just looked around with wide eyes and observed the world. And that has been how she's lived her 23, 24 years on earth. My second came out screaming. My third came out
it's so true.
Fast. Like I delivered him at home because we couldn't even make it to the hospital. And that kid is like, that's just how he is. Crazy. So there's a part of us that just is like it's always been, right? And when we tap into that and we understand that, and then our relationship to the divine, however people want to define that, that just brings us back and refocuses us on the deeper purpose, the deeper meaning, the deeper why of life. And I think that's where true evolution happens. I've always said that, growth and evolution as a human being is not becoming a better person, but it's becoming the most evolved part of yourself, which is essentially just tearing off the layers of ego and saying, okay, who am I? Show me who I am, and let me move forward with that. Well, Shelly, yeah, thank you. What a great conversation we've had today, and I really appreciate you coming on. You're definitely an inspiration to many, many people out there. I think you do a great job of not only putting out great content on your social media, but you have created a social tribe of people locally, people that go running with you, people that are traveling with you. And to me, that's the perfect combination, right? You're using technology and you're using that tribal feel of people around you. And I think that's a great example for people. If you were to give our listeners one last bit of advice, if you were to say, hey, listeners, this is the one thing that you should do on a consistent basis to evolve, what would it be?
I think being the extrovert that I am, I like people and spend more time with the people who give you energy and less time with the people who take it from you. Beautiful advice.
Well, and on that note, folks, it is time for us to wrap up another episode of the Evolve Podcast. I want to thank our guest, Shelly Rudd, for joining us, and my co-host, W. Miles Riley. Shelly, we mentioned your Instagram before, but make sure we give the information out there. If people want to follow you, get in touch with you, learn more about what you do, where do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, Shelly Rudd _travel fit is my Instagram. I'm not really good at checking Facebook, so find me on there. And if you want to travel fit with me, I have a survey in my bio that you can fill out. And I'm just getting fillers for the budget people have, where people want to go, and when they want to go. And I want to get my first retreat scheduled and on the calendar ASAP. So I'd love to meet you and become a part of my community and help you if I have anything to offer you. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, awesome. And we'll get that link and actually put that in the show notes as well, so that our listeners could go directly there and fill that out. And I'll tell you, if you're going to do some couples retreats, I think Danielle and I would love to come and do that. That's the way we love to vacation is we think through what can we go play, how can we go play, and what can we go do when we travel. That exploration is really, to us, that's the spice of life. So absolutely love that.
I love that.
Folks, we'll put all of Shelly's links in the show notes. And hey, remember, it does take time and consistency to evolve, but first you've got to disrupt. And now it's time for you to get out there and evolve. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Evolve Podcast. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. And if you haven't done so, please give us a rating. As an independent podcast, it really helps us get more reach. This podcast is part of our mission to help millions of people evolve into the best versions of themselves. Please check out our coaching services at evolve-cast.com or pick up some of our Evolve merch. Until next time, keep evolving.